start taking some questions from the audience, but while they're thinking through, maybe if each one of you has a favorite story from the set, we can just kind of go at random.
The one thing that I do want to share that I thought of while listening was that I remember early on taking home dailies and thinking something was wrong with my television because the color on my television just, it looked terrible and muddy, and I went to work the next day and tried to watch them there, and there was something wrong with their television as well, and it turned out that they used a coral filter on the lens, which I had no idea. I was pretty new to costume designing at that point in time, and I remember having glasses made, which I still have, with the coral. It was a Lee color gel, whatever number it was, and when I would shop, I would always look through those glasses so I would know what it would look like on television.
It was an 85 filter double, two of them.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. But I really thought something was the matter with my television, but it changed how I did what I did because it made me do a better job of my job.
Were there any specific costumes you can remember that had to be altered because of that?
I just remember, and again, I don't know about color in that way, but I just remember that the greens got very muddy. Things got muddy. They either were enhanced and looked vibrant, or they got muddy. So I just had to make subtle adjustments to accommodate that. But you know, in Twin Peaks, we were just mad about plaid. That was that was the motto, and that was really always what we were looking for was plaid.
Lori, I actually wanted to ask you a question about the music with Angelo. Once a theme has been introduced onto the show, it then starts getting used in rotation with other music. For instance, let's say Donna and Maddie record the song, and then suddenly that's used throughout later episodes. Are you involved at all in the orchestration, or is that still Angelo's department?
Angelo recorded several versions, or many versions in some cases, of each theme. So there would be like just the solo alto flute playing a theme, and then there would be a full orchestra version of the same theme. Solo guitars, they gave me solo drum tracks, solo sax tracks. I had, you know, the full mixes and then solo tracks that they mixed for me, so they didn't have to like do any compression or anything like that. So, but anyway, essentially, it gave us the opportunity to change the orchestration as the scene played through. So we may start out with a solo instrument and then just sneak in the track with the strings, take the strings out and just have some drums going. And then I started playing around with overlapping different themes and found that it's a lot like Ennio Morricone. A lot of Angelo's themes worked with each other because, you know, they all came from the same guy, from the same soul, and like in the second season especially, there were no rules by that point, and we started playing with everything and seeing if it worked, mixing different tracks together, reversing things. But yeah, so the themes, they were kind of sacred in a way. James had the kind of twangy guitar sound, and I remember after they solved after they solved the mystery, David didn't want to use Laura's theme anymore. He's like, tell Angelo to write something new. And so we had to really pull back on it, because we use that a lot, and it was such a beautiful theme. But so we really pulled back on that and tried to use some other music, because it was, you know, the music was trying to sort of move to a new place as well as the storyline.
I've also noticed, especially in some of the stuff we watched tonight, some music that really bridges scenes. Sometimes scenes that are tonally very different. For instance, there's that sequence with Dick Tremaine and Little Nicky changing the tire, which at a certain point goes into that very dark music, and then it transitions into a very dark scene. How much did you have to sort of search for things that could work for two different tones?
With that one, I remember I just watched that scene and I thought, wow, we used a really dark theme for Little Nicky. And it was probably because we were breaking down kind of the sacred aspect of some of the earlier super dark themes that we only used in cases where, where we were going to see Bob or something, for example. But so, yeah, I remember thinking, wow, that was pretty dark for Little Nicky. But I don't remember the actual process of choosing it. It wasn't really that good.
Does anyone want to start lining up questions? Yeah, you have a question?
Yeah, do you need a mic?
Oh, I'm so sorry, yes, actually. So, let me grab one from the middle here. Oh, there it is, yeah.
Thanks. Hi, thank all of you for coming. One of the things I was curious about, as far as the actors that are in the scene and in the moment, the circumstances with a lot of disembodied supernatural entities and visions and so forth. And one of the coolest things about the show is that they don't over-define exactly what these things are. So I was curious, how much were the actors on their own as far as their choices as to what exactly they're interacting with in the scene, and how much guidance did the actors get from the writers, the producers, and so forth? Thanks.
Well, I believe in these things. I grew up with it. I lived on the reservation in Arizona until I was 10, and I believe these things existed. They were all real to me.
I never had any of those things. I was like normal Norma. My thing was about, the two men. But I wanted to say two things. One about the music. I think not all of us, but half of us were on the pilot, at least. Do you remember when she sang that theme song and he filmed it all night long? The girl, what was her name with the pink hair or the white hair? Julie Cruz. And how creepy that was. And then also, one of my favorite stories was that I knew that this actor, David Duchovny, was working on the show, and I knew he was really cute. And he came into the makeup trailer in drag, and I had no idea who he was. And they said, well, actually, he didn't want to even be known. And, by the time he got into, am I right? By the time he got into that costume, he was no longer a great-looking guy. He was her, him, her, whatever it was. But anyway, to answer your question, I never had to, I just insulated, myself from anything, that was going on. And that's why she could run the diner and people would come there and talk about the weirdness, and it'd be like, more cherry pie. She didn't have to engage with any of this strangeness, which is better.
I engaged, with a piece of ponderosa pine. But it engaged back at me. A wonderful scene partner. Never gave me any trouble. And that's my experience.
And that log was very prepared. And I just remember as a director, like working with Catherine and the log, is that we played everything very real. That log had a voice, and when Catherine was listening to the log, it was talking to her. So, everything was played very real. As rather than pretending. It didn't feel like that was happening at all.
Did anybody ever see the Sesame Street version of Twin Peaks?
No.
Oh, I had a toddler at the time, so I had an opportunity to see it on television, and there's a whole Twin Peaks episode on Sesame Street where every character has two beaks, and it's that same kind of music, and Alistair Cookie Monster introduces it, and they eat a lot of pie, and there's a log bird who looked and sounded like me, and then there's a log with two beaks. It's kind of amazing. I think you can get it on YouTube.
I remember very clearly directing David when he was the hard of hearing FBI agent. Yes, Gordon. And because I directed him in the 2 episodes he was in, and that was hard to keep a straight face. Like the crew, you know, with him, that scene where he takes Michael Onkin into Michael's office to have a private conversation, and the whole sheriff's office hears it, was, I mean, behind the camera, everyone was like, I mean, it was, you know, but again, played very real.
Really funny story. If you notice, the first time that we're going to go in Jock's cabin, the first time that it's Michael Onkin and Kyle and me, we're gonna see evil for the first time. A lot of people ask me, you and Kyle had this look on your face. Michael Onkin had the worst gas. He was a vegetarian, and he would just let it, and he wouldn't even acknowledge he did it, you know? So we're outside, the camera's on the inside, and we're getting ready to go, and Kyle turns around and looks at me, and his eyes are watering. I go, what is the matter with you? I go, oh my God, and he went, action. So that look that you see upon, that's where that came from.
Michael, do you remember that crazy shot that we did with all the Mount Rushmore, all the profiles?
That's a classic.
Yeah. I mean, that, you know.
And when Michael Parks died, Michael Parks and I, we used to run together. Michael Parks is a pretty tough old guy. You know, that character he plays, that's a real guy. So I can't remember who it was that said, when he was dead, they said, kick him and make sure. And I said, I'm kicking Michael Parks. And he's looking up at me like, you kick me, I will choke you. It's not going to happen.
Child size. I just want to know what the backstory, you talked about the backstory for the log lady, and it's such a mysterious and amazing character. I just want, if you would share with us, that's all.
Well, she had a rough life, and her husband died in a fire, and so there was a lot of fear of fire. And you may notice that in the log lady's cabin, the fireplace is boarded up, and the relationship with the wood really has to do with her husband who died in the fire. And we really, David and I talked through her whole story at the time, and we just try to make that be underneath everything. But I can't remember all the details of the fact that she really did know everything, and the log really did tell her. How the log found out, I don't think I can reveal that even to this day.
Hello. First of all, thank you for being here and being a part of the coolest show ever. I had a question because what's interesting about the episodes we watched today are, I remember this was all sort of from the time when it felt like the world at large sort of turned on the show a little bit in the second season, and I was just wondering, how aware were you guys sort of behind the scenes of sort of what sort of the crazy rise of the show in the first season and the crazy fall of the show? Were you really aware of that, and sort of what was the change in the atmosphere on the set? Were there like emergency story meetings about what to do, or what was the? I'm just curious what the feeling was.
I think we always felt that we were operating on a different plane, and I don't mean a better one, but just a different one. And so we never really. So the notion of things turning. I mean, yes, things certainly changed after that first season, but we were always. I mean, there was a long period of time when we would go to these fucking award shows, and it was just humiliating. Like we would go to like the daytime soap opera awards because we were nominated in the soap opera character, and then of course we would lose the Days of Our Lives or something like that. We'd go, and then of course the Emmys, which I still remember sitting behind David, and they said, "And best director is a tie." And we go, "Well, we can't miss out now." And then of course, no, it was, and so we always felt like we were sort of outside of the world that way. And so when things, and listen, the second season was very chaotic, but also I think because the first season, you have to understand that after those first kind of 7 episodes, suddenly David's on the cover of Time magazine in August. Mark and I are at Steven Spielberg's house talking to him about directing the first episode of the second season, which he very much wanted to do. And so all of it was sort of insane. And then as the season went on, there was never a sense of, oh, we have to make ABC happy. So it wasn't about that. I think now it's so different, particularly network television, where there's the numbers the next morning, there's the conversations, what are you going to do, how are you going to fix it? We were just trying to do the best that we could.